Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Cop Talk. I'm Kevin Schroeder, your host. I'm here with my co-host, Captain Ed Mamet.
Hello, WABC listeners. Today's guest is very special because I worked with his father. I'll talk about it later.
So today's guest is Thomas Sullivan. Thomas, welcome.
Oh, thank you very much.
Thomas Sullivan is a Republican candidate for the 23rd Assembly District in Queens. He is a 30-year military veteran. Thank you for your service.
Thank you.
He's also currently in the U.S. Army Reserve with the rank of colonel, an experienced business owner, financial services professional, and community leader. He lives with his family in Breezy Point. Tom, once again, welcome.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me. It's great to be here in the studio, and it's just very heartwarming to have a conversation with Captain Mamet. Wonderful stories of my father to share. You know, I was very young when my father retired from the police department, probably 4 or 5 years old. And I just love running into people old timers like yourself who served with him in the department.
Tom, he was a great guy.
Tom, just a little more about your background, where you grew up, and a little about your family and your dad as well, being on the job.
Yeah, sure. So I was born in Brooklyn, number 6 of 7 boys. My father, affectionately called me number 6 here and there, right? Couldn't always get the name straight, so number 6. But we when I was born, basically, we had a house out in the Rockaways at that point, a summer community back then in the early 70s. My father always instilled, he was very patriotic. We ended every family event with God Bless America. Our guests would always love that, appreciate that. Grew up in a very patriotic community there in the Rockaways with several World War II veterans, Battle of the Bulge, Omaha Beach. And my father and my mother, for that matter, treat these folks with a tremendous amount of respect, And then I was 6 years old when my eldest brother attended the United States Military Academy at West Point. So a lot of military background and a lot more to come after my eldest brother went to the academy.
And your brother Mike, who I'm very friendly with, Mike Sullivan, he's a retired cop as well, right? NYPD?
No, Mike has several citations from several mayors for getting, helping police officers out. Once was right around the block from our family business, Brendan the Carr restaurant. But no, Mike had a severe shoulder injury, had a rotator cuff surgery in his early 20s from all the football. And, boy, he had a scar from the back of his shoulder all the way down under his armpit, and that unfortunately disqualified him from being in the NYPD.
What about any firemen in the family?
Yeah, so, the eldest brother did 8 years active duty after West Point, went into the Secret Service. Then I have a brother, Brian, who became a full inspector on the Port Authority Police Department. And then one of the brothers the youngest brother became a NYPD, and then broke my father's heart and went over to the FDNY.
Wow.
And then I have another brother that did 30 years active duty service and just retired a couple of years ago.
Wow, thank you. Wow. Tom, what's some of the issues facing the 23rd Assembly? What's some of the issues that need to be addressed as in regards to...
Yeah, so, the 23rd Assembly District is a very residential area, neighborhoods like Lindenwood and Howard Beach and Rockaway Beach.
Yeah, what areas does it cover?
And Broad Channel, and the entire Rockaway Peninsula. We're talking very residential, very, nice neighborhoods. And we're seeing some violent crime. And most recently, and I see you're wearing a shirt that Sergeant Diller, right, murdered down in the 101st Precinct there in Far Rockaway only a couple of months ago, maybe 5-6 months ago. It shocked the neighborhoods to have that happen. And unfortunately, in certain parts of the district down there in the Rockaways, that's not uncommon with the shootings. in the area. So that is certainly, it's gotten worse, much worse over the last 8 to 10 years. And we have a Walgreens that is, you hear a rumor right now, a conversation that they may be closing because they're being, they're looting and they're shoplifting so drastically. They're going to put this big commercial business out of business, and it's just becoming acceptable, right? The police they're working hard with the limited resources, and they come out there, and you'll always have your criminal element that steal from you, right? And there's some violence involved in that, and the police get there and they do a great job. But then you have opportunists, right? That's another layer. I'm telling the police officers. But now you have the kids from the local grade school and high school walking in. It could be a bag of chips. It could be bags of candy. It could be cases of beer. That was a recent one just a couple of weeks ago. And when they were confronted by a conscientious employee, they started launching beer bottles all over the place, injuring people and causing massive damage. It's become acceptable behavior. There's no deterrence, right? The police, like I said, they get there for the violent crimes and all that. But, when it comes to what we used to call, right, petty crime, it's become so normal and acceptable that it's become a big problem.
Yeah, I believe in some of these stores, like you're talking about Walmart and Walgreens, I believe the security guards are told don't even do anything because they don't want any confrontation. It's just a deterrent, but they don't want any confrontation.
So, right, this is exactly. It's one vicious circle. So you actually have store policies, and these policies existed quite some time ago where they don't want the employees engaging for their own safety, right? It makes sense. Right. Call the police, let them handle it. But and you've heard nationally, there's been some employees lose their job because they've gotten involved, right? Because they care. Yeah, and recently we had a resident who decided to go, tangle with one of these teenagers. Now, if somebody gets hurt, you're the one going to jail. It's unfortunate. The police come in and they'll lock you both up, right? But you're the one who assaulted the other person for stealing a bag of chips or a case of beer or something like that. So people just online, I sit there, I've seen it myself. I stood online, I paid for my products, and others walk out without paying. Right. Sometimes I walk out because guess what now? Everything's locked up.
Yeah. Right.
Locked up, and I'm standing there, you're waiting for somebody to come by and say, you know what, I don't need it.
Can't find an employee.
And so now we have a local business that everybody uses. What's going to happen to the neighborhood when the store vacates? So that's a whole other type of crime, right? You have just another vacant lot, another empty business, and then it becomes an area for maybe drug sales and other sorts of crimes, right? Because of where it is up against the L train there, the A train.
Yeah, true.
Stuff we're not used to in that neighborhood.
No, exactly. Like you mentioned earlier, Detective Dilla was killed in your assembly, in your district, correct?
Yeah.
Yes.
I had met him 4 nights at a precinct community council meeting.
Wow.
And the council praised him for the work he had done with derelict vehicles, just no plates or phony plates, and it's just so sad because one of the residents there, they brought up the fact that they can't walk their child down a street because the cars just park on the street. And they sit in the bus stops, and they can't get on the bus. They got to go out into the street to get on the bus. And that's exactly what Sergeant Dilla was doing that night, trying to move a vehicle out of a bus stop. And he loses his life over that.
Horrible. Tom, small business. So you're a small business owner, right? You're Brendan and Carr?
Brendan and Carr Restaurant since 1938 in Brooklyn.
Yeah, tell us a little about the restaurant.
Yeah, sure. My grandmother worked there the second day it opened, and my father went to school around the corner and would come there and help clean tables, and as young as 8 years old, and eventually he becomes a New York City police officer. They're still in the neighborhood. the family decides that after close to 50 years, decided they're selling to a chain. And my father had been working there, as a police officer, and back then in the day it was frowned upon, right? Just to try to support, the family. He had 4 kids at the time, 4 children. And he saw that conversation and approached Mr. Carr at the time, and on a handshake, right? It was going to be hard for my father to get a bank loan, bought the business in 1970. So all the kids, we all worked there through high school and college, and 2 of them are still working there. And
wow.
Every once in a while, we all pitch in somewhere. But I now handle things like, the insurances, the taxes, the licenses, food and liquor license. And so it's good to be involved. My mother is still the owner of the restaurant, for the record. And we've had several nieces and nephews work there. And she's very proud of that, to be able to provide them an opportunity to work there. So I drove my father nuts for many years. We got to open more, right? Mm-hmm. And so I did eventually open one in Rockville Center, Long Island.
Okay.
And we opened 40 years, almost to the date later, in July of 2000. A year later, September 11th happens, and I worked in the World Trade Center at the time on the 96th floor. Our company was devastated with 107. We lost 107 of my coworkers and friends, and then the deployments started happening, right? 2003, 2006, 2009, and it was hard. I had a civilian job. I had the military deployed to Iraq, Afghanistan, Kuwait. And I was married with 3 very young kids. I missed them all walk and talk for the first time. And, the family had a conversation, said, your civilian job, the Army, the restaurant. Let's stop there, right? I don't want to lose the family. Yeah, so it's great to be a small business owner, and but there's some things now make it very difficult, and it just bothers me when I hear some of these career politicians, right? They talk about they support veterans, but they never served, right? Oh, we support small business owners, but they never owned a small business and know what it's like to work 7 days a week and deal with the frustrations and the challenges that come with that. They all think for some reason they're all, rich. And it's a passion, and it was always a passion to open that restaurant.
So obviously you understand small businesses, what they go through today. Yes.
Oh, yeah.
Right.
It's, listen, as much aggravation and as many of the challenges, right? You have patrons to keep happy. You have employees to work with, and properties and lawsuits, for things, not even under your, right?
It's a lot.
But it's yours. It's yours.
Right.
It's your counter. It's your business. And you take a lot of pride in that. So I know it's not for everybody.
Right. Captain?
You mentioned Brendan and Carr. That location is an iconic location.
Oh, yeah.
It's a very well-known restaurant in Brooklyn. A lot of the cops go there. And, and then you mentioned your dad. Oh, I mentioned your dad earlier. I just want to say that he was a wonderful man. And one of the greatest things I remember about him is I was severely injured. I was in the hospital, and he had back surgery. And the medical staff decided to put us both in the same room. And one night I had a problem, and the nurses weren't coming, and I was ringing the bell, and your father, with his surgery, he's bandaged up and stitches in his back and plates and screws, crawled out of bed on the floor to help me. And that's the kind of guy your father was, just a wonderful man.
Yeah, and I appreciate you sharing that. Like I mentioned, I was probably 4 or 5 years old when my dad retired and didn't get to meet too many of his partners and hear the stories and live through that. And That's exactly who my father was. And one of his passions later on in life was to take people to the hospital and wait there and bring them home, or come back another day and bring them home. And he was known to sit out there in front of the hospitals, or if it was a, outpatient surgery, he'd be there. And I can't tell you how many folks, that's where he felt, I guess, he could help, right? Drive you anywhere you want to go, that man,
Well, he was a good detective. I was his sergeant, and he was a very good detective. He's just a wonderful all-around guy. Getting back to military leadership, what lessons have you learned from the military that you can bring into the position you're seeking?
Yeah, so let's start with the word itself, leadership. We talk about integrity, honesty, and making hard decisions, and telling the truth as hard as it may come. That's one of the things I learned with the military. You have to be able to, deliver bad news and provide a solution, by the way, right? You can't just complain about anything. So I learned that, I joined the Army Reserves, and when I graduated, I got a commission from when I graduated college. And I had other intentions. I actually wanted to be a New York City police officer. Oh. And, I got a job in finance, and things were going well. And my father at the time, it's not the same job that it was when he was on, and had concerns there, So I naturally, obviously, I took the path of going into finance. But, being in the reserves, I felt like at least I could be trained and educated if something were to happen. And I'll tell you, if I may just throw this in there, I remember going places, and the active duty, they had a different opinion of the reserves back then in the 90s. And they found it hard to believe that, your Army Reserve, when we need you, we'll call you, or when we need to break the glass, right? All that changed after September 11th.
Well, they used to call you weekend warriors.
Yeah, right. And I had a bumper sticker one time, not on my car, but I had it. It said one weekend a month, and 2 weeks out of the summer, my ass. And it was always more than that. But, with the events of September 11th and fighting wars and still operating out of Kuwait and Iraq and Afghanistan, and still maintained presence in the South Pacific and the South China Sea, they depended on us. And they came to the realization in probably 2005, 2006 that it's no longer a reserve force. It's an operational ready reserve. So what that basically meant was National Guard, Army Reserve will take part in every operation anywhere around the world at any time. And little did I know that I'd be away from my family for 4.5 years, at different intervals. But like I said, Iraq, Afghanistan, Kuwait. I served in Iraq with my brother Tim. My father was extremely proud, and my mother proud too, but I can't imagine the worries she had on her mind with having multiple kids in multiple places and all over the world, and my wife is absolutely amazing. Like I mentioned, I had twin boys that I missed them walk and talk for the first time. I left, and my parents filled the gap wherever they could. My sister-in-laws filled the gaps. My neighborhood, right? They didn't know how to deal with this. This is a big issue. I always brought up with the Army, something I took an interest in, right? When you're active duty, you're on a military base, so there's lots of programs and services, right? And the person next door to you is in the same boat, right? Their husband's gone, your wife is gone. So they have those support elements. I got pulled out of my neighborhood, right? And Army Reserves and National Guards, you just get pulled out of your neighborhoods. And it's neighbors and families and book clubs my wife's book club, they fill these gaps. And it was just a tremendous learning experience, and very grateful for that. But the military on the leadership lessons at a very young age, I'm now in charge of 186 people. The morale, the welfare, their safety, their training, their education. And if they have problems at home, we have to help them through that. If they have financial problems, we got to figure out how to, because we got to keep their head in the game, and we got to keep them, focused on the mission. And we lack that. I see that in a lot of elected officials, especially the career ones that have been around too long. I'm a big believer in term limits.
Taking your military experience and your experience in rebuilding Breezy Point, how does that prepare you for dealing with possible emergencies down the road?
Yeah, so, we call that crisis management, right? And at the time, I happened to be a board of director for the community of 2,834 homes. And every single home, right? Not just there, but also the entire Rockaway Peninsula. But we were a cooperative. And we didn't know if we were going to survive financially, because every single home, including the directors, my home was gone. I was displaced for 5 years. First out to Levittown, then to Brooklyn, then deployed, trying to build a house from Afghanistan. And, my wife, she held it together tremendously. But I had a responsibility to the community, right? So I could relate to them. My home is gone too. And this is going to be a financial challenge. And it's certainly, right, we use words like resiliency. And it took that community, and it took, good family, solid family support groups. My kids are well adapted, right? They lost their home. They lost all their stuff. They visually saw all their stuff piled in a street or gone, taken from the home from them. And, you have to hold it together. You have to persevere. And while I'm trying to tell my family it's going to be okay, speaking to the broader community that we're going to make this, right? We're going to come back, and we're going to be stronger. And I think one of the hardest lessons learned out of that was, I'll take my neighbor, for example. She was 97 at the time, still driving. Amazing, Mary Kemper. And it literally took the life out of her. They put her in a local nursing home, the family, just to keep her close. And 3 months later, I could see the look on her face, like that was it. And that was we lost a lot of people, just like they were healthy, right? It was like a phenomenon for the neighborhood. And but we were there for each other, and we had to succeed. There was no option for failure, right? That's one of the military lessons. Failure is not an option. We have to make this happen, and we'll figure it out. So, and sometimes, I don't want this to come out the wrong way, but sometimes you're on your own, right? Government is supposed to be there. They came in with some efforts, and they were certainly there. The military was there. And one of the lessons learned was you have a lot of your reserve units and National Guard units that respond to these events, right? But now we all live in a community that was impacted, so you can't respond, right? Right? It would be hard for me to respond to what? So I remember, learning from when we did our emergency operations plan afterwards. We need units from like Pennsylvania or New Jersey, and New Jersey too. The shore was certainly impacted, but we had units from Ohio, right? But those are lessons learned from big disasters. We call them in the military crucible moments, right? A crucible is that melted steel that gets put into a mold, and it shapes you. So whether it's hardship with a business or dealing with multiple financial crises over 30 years, deployments, These are the things that shape you, your character, and yeah.
Taking all that experience, plus your financial experience, how would you apply that to public safety in your district and the state of New York?
Yeah, so a lot of my experience with providing for the security of people, personnel, equipment, or ports, right? So there was a time in my career in Kuwait where I was operations manager of a port. And because we were so spread out thin, we had to internally provide security for the port, right, and the facilities. So you learn about securing physical structures, but your personnel are under threat too, right, constantly. And at the time, we're working with a lot of contractors from all over the world, and part of the effort to stimulate the local economy is to hire locals. But you got to go through a significant background checks and security checkpoints and screening on a daily basis. And even Breezy Point, right? We had to, after Hurricane Sandy, one of the things is looting, right? How do we secure no light, no power? It's damp, it's cold, we're heading into the winter months, and there's opportunities out there, right? And same for Rockaway, all of Rockaway. So we sat together as a board and say, how do we secure our people and their belongings, the remainder of their belongings? Did that in Iraq, did it in Afghanistan. I even did some work with canines, right? Got some experience with that in Afghanistan. Guard towers, right? So you got physical security stuff, you have policy security, and I think that's where more as like a state assembly person, we have such bad policy. It's staggering to see how poor our policy is, and policy supports like the police department. When you have a policy such as some of our elected officials that support a defund the movement, right? You're teaching generations, and it'll take a generation to fix, right? Not days, weeks, months, or years. A generation to fix this mindset of the police are the bad guys. So when you allow a bottle of urine, or you allow water or hoses, and the police can't do anything back to even come to you and say, "Listen, that's not nice. That's not kind. That's not what you're supposed to be." You just created a new that became acceptable, right? And we have to change that, and that's what we call whether it's in finance or higher echelons of the military, we call that messaging and themes, right? And our enemies try to do this every day to divide us on a nationally, and whether it's a civic leader or an elected official. These messages and these themes they present to the general public are severely detrimental to the safety of our law enforcement officers. So whether it's Governor Cuomo, stating, do not cooperate with ICE. How is that? One law enforcement agency after another not cooperating with each other? This is one of the lessons learned at 9/11. They were not sharing information. They were not cooperating with each other, maybe not intentionally, right? They were very territorial. And now we're back to that. But like saying it out in the open, it's very dangerous. So, as potentially a future elected official, you want to change policy. You got to change the message, and you have to change the theme to go with that, right? We got to get back to for law enforcement safety and for the public safety. You cannot demonize, law enforcement.
Tom, that brings me to my next question. Currently, what changes would you make in current policies now? What would you advocate for that are policies that are in place right now, first in regards to law enforcement and public safety?
Yeah, so there's a couple specific to, you know, some of them are in general to law enforcement, but specific to the NYPD, right, in our city, because I'm in Queens. You have, first you have public officials. I would want to hold them accountable for these remarks, right, that jeopardize our law enforcement, and maybe not make them want to work as hard or as they would if they cared about, you know, right, if you care for them. The other is, right, things like clean slate. So we're going to lock them up. We're going to put our lives in jeopardy, and then you're just going to wipe the slate clean, right? Qualified immunity, right? So now I'm going to go out in my job, and I'm going to fight with somebody 50 pounds heavier than me, maybe on drugs, maybe not on drugs. It's dark. Maybe it's just my partner or I. Maybe we're outnumbered, right? And then we're going to have everybody judge me and determine I did not follow, you know, the proper training or the regulation or a rule somewhere, and now my pension's in jeopardy, my home's in jeopardy, or I'm going to go to jail, right? And the one thing is, you know, is none of us are there. They were there. They had to make that decision, right? So to lose your qualified immunity, now I understand that's a city, right? That's a city council, that's the mayor that did that. But as a state assemblyman, you know, potentially a future state assemblyman, I'd hold them accountable to the laws that state elected officials make, right? Same with the district attorneys.
Let me just add, the state also has is not using qualified immunity. It's not just the city.
Right.
The state has it, so it's a double bang.
Right, correct. And there are not many states that have that policy in effect. So,
well, you know, it's a Supreme Court decision, so you can't go against that. But the states can choose not to enforce qualified immunity.
Yeah, but you know, this is the ignorance of certain elected officials. It's right for the listeners out there, right? Qualified immunity just means if I use the tools that were given to me, right? If I use the training that was provided to me, and I make good decisions, you're not going to hold me personally accountable for all this, right? For a bad, violent scene. It doesn't mean I could do whatever I want, when I want, to whoever I want, and get away with it. That's what most people think it is.
Now, what it is, it's protection to a police officer and other public officials for good faith decisions.
Exactly. Great word. Good faith decisions, right? And now we have, right, you have innocent bystanders who get involved. Daniel Penny, right? You're there to go there to help somebody. Something goes wrong, and now you're brought up on murder charges. What we're saying is, maybe to a police officer, maybe I don't go that fast to the scene and risk my life or kill somebody on the way. Maybe or get there, you know, for what? It's a bad situation. So I think it you know, it's a seed planted in the back of the heads that what's going to happen to me, right? When I get there, what situation are we coming into? And I think that's a very negative impact on the effectiveness and the will of our law enforcement agencies to respond. And so forth, but they just I speak to so many of them, and they're all just they're doing the best with what's given them, but they do not feel supported by the policymakers, by the lawmakers.
So when you get to the state legislature, you should try and get it repealed.
Absolutely, right. So that's got to, you know, and so no cash bail, right. So here I am again as a police officer. I'm going to lock you up, and you're going to be out before I'm done with the paperwork attitude, right? That's not supporting law enforcement. I hear all these politicians, I'll sign this, sign that to, you know, for benefits. That's a whole other discussion. The only promise I make to law enforcement at this, as I sit here today, is that I will do everything I can to get the target off your back. I'll do everything I can to restore the integrity that my father had. He loved the police department, and he was sad to be able to tell me, I don't know if it's right for you, or or if it's the right time. I remember that conversation. It wasn't easy for me, right? I'd been working, established. I took the tests, and yeah, it was not an easy decision. I'm here 30 years later, and my father was certainly proud of me, certainly for serving in uniform in another capacity. But, you wanted to make Dad and Mom proud, and being a police officer, being in law enforcement, as I described with many of my family members, that's what it was about. But it hurts me when, maybe like my wife, right? She doesn't want that for them. And I just say, you got to fight. You can't give up. You got to fight. If he wants to be a policeman, he wants to be a policeman. One of my sons, I just commissioned him in the Army. He's going to be a helicopter pilot just last month. Graduated at University of Alabama. Not easy I get it, for a mother or a father for that matter, But he's a young man now. And things are not right in the world all over the place, but I'm very proud of him. But I worry about him every day. So, if the other son wants to be a police officer, we got to support that, right? Yeah. And but I get it. It's not, mothers and fathers may not always see it the same way, but Grandpa would be proud. I'm losing track here. I have like 4 or 5 nieces and nephews that are on the Port Authority Police Department, NYPD detective. We're all proud of them, and we're all like with it. Like the family will tell you, and the other nieces and nephews will tell you, we're there for you. We recognize the challenges that you're facing, and it's sad, and shouldn't be that way.
Right.
Right.
Ed?
What you said before about your grandson, one of your kids going into the military?
My son.
Your son. I can and the feeling of a parent, how you feel about it. I had a similar experience. My grandson decided he wanted to join the Israeli military. So he picked up and he left. He went to Israel, and he's now a captain in the IDF. And while it caused a lot of anxiety among his father and mother, I'm very proud of him. So I know what you're talking about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes, it is. It was a very proud moment, and to see a lot of people in the audience. My uniform shrunk a little bit, but I was able to get it on, and to stand up there, and it was ironic because they've switched to a new uniform now, right? So it was so obvious to have one generation pinning another generation. And my mother was there to do it as well.
So, Tom, 7 brothers, right?
Yep, 7.
Okay, so all 7 of you wore some type of uniform, right? Military, fireman, police officer? Correct?
Secret Service, Port Authority, Police Department.
A uniform of some
My
sort,
grandmother
right?
was a matron in the early 1900s.
That's
my
awesome.
grandfather was a fireman, fought with my father all the time with the police department.
Cap, sorry.
Speaking of veterans, this is a good point to bring this in. When you're when you're in office, what would you do to help the veterans who need your help? Disabled, those out of work, some of them are homeless. And because you have that background, what would you do for them?
Okay, so great point, right? And this is what we miss all the time. We try to put lipstick on a pig with these just bad policies or not understanding the problem, right? So you come up with a poor solution. I'm the commander of my local VFW post for like the last 8 years. And I deal with these issues almost on a daily basis with our older generations, maybe some financial problems, maybe some drug addiction. So I hate to use the word because our vice president used it and destroyed it, but root causes, right? And if there's a homeless person, nobody chooses to be homeless, right? Maybe they're suffering from some form of addiction and just can't get out of the way of it. So we have to do a better job at treating addiction and getting them real help. And I'll talk about a personal story in a second. Mental illness, right? we now have these liberal policies, and liberal in the sense of not politics, liberal and conservative, just liberal policies where everybody has rights, right? And homeless person certainly has rights, but we're not doing them any favor by just, it's okay. They want to live on the street, nothing I can do about it, right? They don't want to go to a homeless shelter or go to a shelter or go to a medical facility, then they're not doing that. There was a time that, and I just remember some of these stories, even with veterans. If that police officer didn't pull me off that street, or that fellow veteran didn't pull me off the street and get me to a place and give me that opportunity to like reconnect with myself and the mental health services or the drug addicted services, they'd be dead of that. We were saving people. These policies now are flawed, and they're flawed because they don't understand the problem. And I just don't know, so I'm dealing with this terribly with a dear friend, a childhood friend. We get them somewhere, and it's awful. You get them somewhere, and they'll clean it, they'll put an IV in him and neutralize he's suffering from alcohol. And once he becomes coherent, right, because he doesn't know who he is, he's not making decisions for himself. He's a veteran, a Marine Corps veteran, served in Iraq and had a very tough tour. And because he's my friend, I'm trying, right? I may not have the money or that, but I have the understanding of PTSD, and over the years I've learned some things about alcoholism. So when we bring him to a VA or to a local hospital, and you go the next morning, oh, where is he? Oh, he signed himself out. Well, that's great. That's not giving them their freedom. You're just setting them up for bigger disaster. So I believe it's more compassionate and smarter and more effective to detain somebody until you give them a fighting chance, You
mean against their will?
Well, especially when they come in and don't know what day of the week it is or who they are, for sure, And yeah, some people might call it patient's rights, right? Oh, I have the right. You can't keep me, okay? Somebody who's addicted to alcohol, right? It could take 27 days just to break the physical addiction, and then the psychological impact. So we can't let them, right? We can't just let them sit on a street corner in the cold or the heat and unsanitary for them. And, like I said, maybe some make some sort of conscious decision to do this, but for the most part, when you don't know who you are, whether it's the mental illness or the drugs, and you don't do that. So that's what I would do. I would be a little firmer on these policies, certainly fund some more of these programs that I've come across that do tremendous work. They save lives. They save lives. They save families. They save families from this disaster. I'm going through this. The family has done everything they can, right? They couldn't possibly throw enough money at it and time, and it causes problems within the family. We're not doing them justice, right? Call it tough love or what it is. Back in the day, if a teenager had a problem, maybe the military was the best thing. I serve with many of those people that tell me the story that if it wasn't for the military, I'd be out there, not doing such nice things. So, but, if you give them an opportunity, that's being compassionate. That's being tough. And the positive side is that maybe crime will go down. Maybe there will be less people on the street. Maybe there will be a less financial burden on the taxpayer, right? You have a better society for it.
Well, Tom, thank you and your family for their service and your service serving in the military. So thank you very much. Could you let our audience know how they can contact you if they want to get involved with your campaign or they want to donate to your campaign?
Yeah, I mean, the best way, honestly, is, first of all, we'd love to have you on social media. I'm out there on everything, but if you want to help out, it's Sullivan, Sullivan, for Assembly, FOR Assembly 2024.com.
And election day is?
November 5th, Tuesday, November 5th. I may not agree with the policy of, or fully embraced it yet, but I'm getting there. And there's reasons for that. But go out and vote early. So if there's inclement weather or a Hurricane Sandy that interrupted the elections in 2012, there are benefits to early voting. So Tom Sullivan, I have I guess now at 52 years, it's not that old, but I feel like, I've done a lot of things for 30 years, and I have the experience and the education to do the best job.
Captain?
One thing I forgot to mention before, the illegal immigration situation is right in your district.
Correct.
At, Kings Plaza, right?
So technically that's not my district, but we're talking a bridge, right? But it impacts where the business is, where the family business is. And it is having an impact with we have customers, they just want to come in and eat, and they're being approached on the way in, they're being approached on the way out. We've had to take extra security measures at night to secure the building, right? And our customers are being impacted for sure. But what a mess! What a mess! I mean, I could do a semester on immigration, and I mentioned the word root causes before, right? Our vice president said we got to figure out the root causes of this, right? Economic instability or no economic opportunities, war, political persecution, religious persecution, right? I could rattle the root causes off and save you some time. Give me a call.
Well, when you get to the assembly, you can do something about the illegal problem. Yeah. In as much as you can, even though it's a federal issue, I'm sure that you can.
Hey, Captain, great point, right? That is a responsibility of the federal government to secure the borders of this nation. But they've, whether intentionally or through incompetence, they have spread this, throughout all of America. It doesn't matter, Wisconsin, Montana, or New York. We are all border states right now, right? And now you've taken this federal responsibility and you've punted it, to use a football term, to state senators, state assembly people, civic leaders, community leaders. They don't have the authority. They don't have the money. They don't have the resources, right? You're talking about Floyd Bennett Field, right, which used to be a U.S. Naval Air Station, New York, at Floyd Bennett Field. Just a quick story. In 2016, I'm getting promoted to colonel, and I need a military background. So I go over there, and they got a beautiful building there, the Ryan Center now. They put some money into it. That's the only part they fixed up. And I walked in and I said, "Hey, my name's Tom Sullivan. I'm a lieutenant colonel, getting promoted to colonel. I wonder if I could just use this for an hour-long ceremony, U.S. Naval Air Station." And the immediate response is, "We don't do that." Then I brought it to the next level and the next level and the next level. We don't do that. You can't do that here, right? A veteran can't do that here. So I did it all politely, and I still couldn't understand why not, right? To do this, it's not like it would happen every Sunday, and now now it's okay for a migrant camp. And by the way, putting 2,300 people in there, they have no idea how many people there. The accountability is lost. That would never happen in the military. That would never happen in my financial job. That would, never happen. I would be out of business if I couldn't keep accountability of who's coming, not coming, or the food. So no accountability what's going on over there. And but it's okay to put that there and put people in tents with the scorching heat. The weeks after they first put them in there, they had to do a late night evacuation to the local high school, and then they closed school the next day.
Yeah, I remember that.
Right? I remember it all too often. So, again, bad policy at the absolute highest levels of office. supported by simple comments. So, like, you know, when the mayor comes on and says something simple like to the governor of Texas, we'll show you how to do it. You just set a new standard, a new policy, right? You welcomed them here. They're listening, and they came. So, yeah.
Now he's reaping the harvest of that stupid decision.
Well, Tom, thank you for being our guest today. I hope you'll come back.
Oh, anytime. This was wonderful.
Election, and of course after you win the election. So you know, you have our support.
That'd be great.
And we'll hold an election celebration at Brendan and Carr.
Yes,
there we go. Yeah,
absolutely,
absolutely.
So Tom Sullivan, a Republican candidate for 23rd Assembly in Queens. We wish you luck.
Yeah.
And thanks for being our guest today.
May I say one more message?
Sure.
To, especially to the law enforcement officers out there, it's I do understand the dynamic with the unions, right? And I've gone before the unions, and they will not endorse me. So I'm speaking to the rank and file of, my family has dedicated a lot to this country, the state, the city, right? They all wore some sort of uniform. Every last one of them, have served our communities in this capacity. When you go to vote, see what the other person, what their family or what they have done, right? That's what I would tell you. Just do some homework, and I guess you would call this making an appeal to all your rank and file to go out there and support a family that's done it and lived it and still living it. And now we're on, as far as I know, a 5th generation of NYPD.
Right. It'd be great to get the support from our unions, police unions, of course. And also, more important is to have our membership get out and vote, get the vote out. Yeah. Get to the polls that day and vote. The support is great, but at the end of the day, we want the votes. Yeah. So, once again, Tom, thank you for being our guest here on Cop Talk. If you like what you hear, please subscribe. You could also follow us on Twitter at Cop Talk WABC. That's at Cop Talk WABC. Until next time, God bless America. God bless the USA, all law enforcement throughout the country, throughout the world, and God bless you. Till next time, be safe out there.